Good morning. Welcome back to the Eruption of Mount St. Helens. When we last left them, I'm trying to figure out this. I'm doing it on Mac. There you go. They got caught in the actual eruption and had to dig the hole or jump in the hole and kind of dig themselves into the side. And then she was rescued by a helicopter, and they were able to find Sam and Eddie. So, chapter 16. 2 months later, Sunday, July 20th, 1980, Seattle, Washington. Jess was cleaning up her room. She checked the clock. 10 o'clock. Better hurry. She and Mom were having visitors today, and they'd been working nonstop all weekend to get the apartment ready. They'd been in their new place for only a week, but already they were unpacked. Jess loved her new room, which was bright and sunny. She was still getting used to the Seattle noises and the crowds of people, but she liked it here more than she had expected to. She moved carefully. The burn on her back still hurt if she turned too suddenly, but it had healed well. She was glad she couldn't see what it looked like. Mom popped her head through the doorway. "Let's not forget our camera," Mom said. "I have it ready," Jess said. Their new camera. Jess had finally worked up the courage to tell Mom the whole story about losing Dad's camera. "It was Dad's prized possession," Jess had said, fighting tears. Mom had put her arms around her. "No," she said. "You were." Mom looked around Jess's room now and smiled. "It looks great in here," she said. And Jess agreed. The walls were covered with photographs of trees and birds and of Mom. Pictures that Dad had taken. His dream had been for his photographs to hang in a Seattle gallery, and now that dream had come true. Almost. "And I really do love the red," Mom said, admiring the freshly painted walls. Jess loved the color, too. She knew that for the rest of her life, red would be her lucky color. Remember the sweatshirt. Dr. Morales had helped them paint the room. Jess was glad to see that her friend was starting to smile again. He had been safe at his lab here in Seattle when St. Helens erupted, but like many of the scientists, he blames himself for not being able to better predict the eruption. And he had lost one of his close friends, a young scientist who had been near the mountain when it exploded. That man was one of 57 people who died in the eruption. Some people were killed instantly in the pyroclastic surge and the blast of rock and ash. Others died in the floods and the mudslides that raced down the mountain in the hours afterward. Dr. Morales had been right when he predicted that Mount St. Helens would erupt with terrible violence. But not even he had imagined just how powerful the eruption would be. It was one of the most powerful in history, more explosive even than Pele. The entire front of the mountain shattered. Millions of tons of rock and ice and volcanic debris crashed down the mountain. The pyroclastic surge instantly destroyed everything within its 5-mile path. If Jess and the twins had been much closer, they would not have escaped with their lives. A mudslide swept down the mountain, picking up trees and logs and trucks and houses and bridges. The downtown of Cedar was spared, but some people lost their homes, including Missy. She and her family were with relatives in Iowa now. Jess was thinking about writing to her. She wanted to tell Missy the news. That skeleton woman really did exist. In a way. Jess had discovered this about a month after the eruption. By then, Jess's burn had mostly healed. She and Mom had been helping serve meals at a shelter for people who had lost their homes. There was another volunteer working that day, an older woman with a long gray braid and bright blue eyes. "I know you," the woman said to Jess with a smile. And Jess remembered her. She was the woman with the white pickup who they'd seen at the Loomis Lake parking lot the day of that first earthquake. Her name was Gretchen Livingston. She worked for a group that had been trying to save the big old trees near Loomis Lake. Gretchen and Mom had hit it off, and a few nights later at Clive's, Gretchen had told Mom and Jess her secret, that she was the skeleton woman. "What?" Jess had gasped. Gretchen smiled slyly. "For years, our group had been trying to find ways to stop the lumber company from chopping down those beautiful old trees," she explained. "But nothing did work, and finally, the company was going to cut them all down. I was ready to give up, but one day, I was at a restaurant over in Cougar." That was a town across the valley. "I overheard some loggers in the booth behind me. They were talking about the old skeleton woman legend. Of course, I had heard that story when I was a kid." "Me too," Mom said. "The men were spooked by the story. I guess the old witch was supposed to live near Loomis Lake in that old-growth forest right where they were supposed to be cutting." She leaned forward. "That gave me an idea." She found out when the cutting of the trees was set to begin, and she snuck up that part of the forest. She went into the shack and waited. I got my hair all wild and I splattered some red paint on my clothes. I saw that paint in the shack, Jess said. As the men were getting their chainsaws ready, Gretchen continued, I burst out of the cabin. I dashed through the forest very quickly so they could catch just a glimpse of me. She smiled proudly. And that did it. They wouldn't be back. That's when it dawned on Jess. So you're the one who found my camera in the cabin. Ah, that was your camera, she said. I couldn't imagine who would have left it there. We were looking for a skeleton woman, Jess said. Well, you found her, Gretchen said, and they all laughed. Then Gretchen got tears in her eyes. But of course the forest is gone now, she said. Not even Skeleton Woman could stop St. Helens from destroying it all. 230 miles of wilderness had been burned, ripped apart, or buried under 100 feet of mud and debris. Millions of trees were killed by the burning wind. That forest will grow back one day, Mom had said in her usual hopeful way. Nature has an amazing power to heal itself. Dr. Morales had told them that. And it was true. The trees would grow back. The animals would return. But it would take decades. And Jess wasn't sure she ever wanted to go back. She wanted to remember her beautiful mountain the way it had been. It was only a few weeks after that talk that Mom had decided that she was finally ready to move to Seattle. She wanted to go back to college to become a teacher. She wanted Jess to discover life outside Cedar. Mr. Rowan had offered to buy Clive's. He had been badly hurt in the eruption and didn't want to go back to his regular job. Mr. and Mrs. Rowan would run the restaurant, and of course the twins would help. So, in a way, Clive's would stay in the Marlowe family. Jess's throat tightened up as she thought of the twins. She would never forget those terrifying hours after they were rescued from the forest. The boys had been flown to a special hospital in Portland, Oregon, where they stayed for weeks. When they finally got home, Jess slept on the floor of their room every night until they were strong again. Jess still wasn't used to not seeing them every day, but when she closed her eyes, she could hear their happy, bickering voices. When she felt lonely, she could feel their hands gripping hers in their secret handshake. She had spoken to them every day since the move, and today the whole Rowan family was coming to visit. Jess and Mom had a big surprise for the twins, a Mariners game. A few minutes later, the doorbell rang. Jess rushed to the door. She flung it open, and there they were, Sam and Eddie. 2 buzz-cut heads, 4 smiling green eyes, and 10,000 freckles. 4 strong arms grabbed hold of her. 3 hearts pounded with happiness. It was a long time before they let each other go. What? That's odd. Huh. All right. There's some questions. I guess that's the end of the book. I didn't realize we were at the end of the book. I'm sorry. This is from the author, why I took so long to create a girl main character. I have featured some amazing girls in many of my I Survived books, like Xena, who helped her brother Max escape from the Nazis, and Jenny, who led Oscar and her brother Bruno through the blazing streets of Chicago during the Great Fire of 1871. But I had never put a girl on the cover. I always told the stories through the eyes of a boy. The reason for this is that I have 3 boys of my own, Leo, Jeremy, and Dylan, and none of them like to read. It was very hard for them to find books that they really loved. I could rarely convince them to read a book that had a girl main character. And so, about 6 years ago, I decided to write a few books that I thought my own boys would really like. I thought of the title I Survived and imagined a series of 4 books featuring boys going through disasters from history. I had already written 2 other books, both about a girl named Emma Jean Lazarus. I thought the whole I Survived project would take about a year, and then I'd get back to my beloved Emma Jean. But 4 I Survived books turned into 6, which became 8, then 12, and so on. It happened that not only boys liked the books, but girls too. This made me very happy, and then some of those girls started to write to me. Girls like Amelia. Mrs. Tarshish, why are there no girls on your covers? And Chloe. I don't understand why there aren't any girl main characters. And Maya and Charlotte and Mariella, and hundreds of others. I would write back to each of them to explain about my boys. I told them that it has always seemed to be that there were more books for girls like my own daughter Valerie than for boys like my sons. I told them about the thousands of books and their teachers and parents who have written to me to say that they never liked to read and that I Survived books inspired them to become readers. But The girls kept writing me too, and some emails were a little angry. "Don't you think girls are strong too?" wrote Maddie. "What about us?" wrote Allie and Elena. So, after long talks with my editor, Nan, I decided that it really didn't matter if my character was a boy or a girl. I decided that those devoted boy readers of I Survive probably wouldn't care if the main character was a girl or a boy, as long as the books were exciting and interesting. That's true, by the way. And guess what? The writing experience for this book was no different from the others. My I Survive books are so hard to write. Creating Jess was just as difficult for me as creating Max and Oscar and the other boys of I Survived. I love her just as much. And really, my books are not about boys or girls, are they? They're about young people who go through difficult and frightening experiences and discover their inner strength. They're about how people can find inspiration and comfort from their family and friends and their faith. The I Survive books are not boy books or girl books. They are, I hope, human books. Nice. I didn't just realize that the same author wrote all of them. All right, so there's a question and answer about Mount St. Helens, too. It says, why did I write about the eruption? The eruption of Mount St. Helens in 1980 was one of the most environmentally destructive in world history. It was the most powerful natural disaster ever recorded in America, more powerful than Hurricane Katrina in 2005 or the San Francisco earthquake of 1906. And yet many people under the age of 30 have barely even heard of it. How can that be? We tend to remember disasters that result in large numbers of human deaths. The St. Helens eruption destroyed 230 miles of wilderness. But because the mountain was surrounded mostly by forests, it claimed far fewer lives than many other destructive volcanoes. 57 people died in St. Helens. More famous volcanoes like Vesuvius and Krakatoa killed tens of thousands. But the eruption of St. Helens was very important, and not just because it happened right here in the United States. It was the first volcano that scientists could study closely while it was revving up for its eruption. Today, volcano scientists, called volcanologists, have a much better understanding of volcanoes than they did in 1980. And this is because of the lessons learned from St. Helens. All right, what happened when St. Helens erupted? On the morning of May 18th, Mount St. Helens erupted with the force of a 1 megaton nuclear bomb, which is equal to 10 million tons of dynamite. The front of the mountain actually shattered apart and collapsed with rocks tumbling down the mountain in a massive avalanche. The explosion created a cloud of ash, smoke, and gas that shot more than 12 miles up into the sky. It triggered one of the history's biggest landslides. It was 50 miles wide. The wave of mud and debris and melted ice raced down the mountain and swept away bridges, thousands of trees, logs, cars, houses, bulldozers, and roads. The eruption spewed a staggering amount of ash, 520 million tons of it. The ash blew eastward across the United States. In the city of Spokane, Washington, 350 miles away, the ash caused complete darkness. As far away as Montana, ash from St. Helens ruined crops, caused car accidents, and clogged airplane engines. And it says, did the eruption really take the people by surprise? Yes, the eruption was a surprise, and to me that was the most incredible part of the story. There were so many warning signs, thousands of earthquakes between March 20th and the eruption on May 18th. There were dozens of steam explosions, some that lasted for hours. Huge cracks formed in the mountain. Near the summit, the mountain was actually bulging out from the pressure inside it. Just 2 years before, 2 scientists wrote a research paper warning that St. Helens was likely to erupt in the coming years. And yet, the eruption on the morning of May 18th was a true surprise, even to scientists. The mountain had quieted down in the weeks right before. Most scientists had thought there would be some very dramatic warning before it exploded. But the warning never came. 1 minute the mountain was peaceful, and the next it erupted with a violence that few had imagined. It says, are scientists better able to predict eruptions today? Yes, today's scientists have far better tools for studying volcanoes. They have computer programs that can analyze huge amounts of data in seconds. They have lasers that can detect whether melted rock, magma, is rising up through the volcano. But what they truly changed volcano science was the eruption of Mount St. Helens. Scientists from all around the world have studied every second of that eruption. This work has helped scientists better understand the warning signs that often lead to volcanic eruptions. Could St. Helens erupt again? Yes. In fact, it already has many times since 1980. Some of the eruptions have released huge clouds of ash into the sky. In 2004, it spewed 26 billion gallons of lava. But none has come close to the fury of the 1980 eruption. Okay, what are the world's most dangerous volcanoes? There are 1,500 volcanoes in the world that could be active, from the lava-spewing Kilauea of Hawaii to the steaming Katla of Iceland to the quietly beautiful Mount Fuji in Japan. About 160 of the world's most active volcanoes are located in a horseshoe-shaped area surrounding the Pacific Ocean. The area is called the Ring of Fire. The Cascade Mountain range, where St. Helens is located, is part of the ring. Any active volcano is dangerous, but what makes a volcano perilous to humans is mainly its location. Volcanoes located near big cities are far more dangerous than those in remote areas. The eruption of Mount St. Helens could have killed thousands if it had been near a more crowded area. All right, so here are some other intriguing facts about St. Helens. The height of the eruption cloud. The main volcanic cloud rose to between 12 and 15 miles into the sky, into the Earth's stratosphere. Number of earthquakes before the eruption. There were more than 2,000 earthquakes before that eruption. About 230 square miles was destroyed by the eruption, which is about 3 times the size of Washington, D.C. The landslide was 23 square miles, and it was 100 feet deep. And the landslide traveled at 70 to 150 miles per hour. The ash cloud could have circled the globe 3 times. Small amounts of ash fell over 22,000 square miles. Height of the St. Helens before the eruption was 9,677 feet. And after the eruption, it was 8,363 feet. So it lost 1,300 feet by exploding. It destroyed 27 bridges. It destroyed 185 miles of highway. And it destroyed roughly 3 million trees. So that was interesting. All right. Well, that was short. Anyways, there's a lot of I've Survived books. Titanic, Shark Attack, Hurricane Katrina, Pearl Harbor, the San Francisco earthquake. They have one on the attacks of 9/11. Gettysburg. I can't read these hardly. A tsunami. The Nazi invasion. The Pompeii. There's one on Pompeii. Great Chicago Fire, a tornado, the Hindenburg. So there's lots of them. And I bet you she's still writing them. So anyways, I guess I'll have to get on another book. All right. Have a good day.